All right, well, let's get started here with visible body. So this courseware that you're going to receive as part of this class is pretty exceptional, and it's going to allow us to have our labs virtually in a way that just really wasn't possible up until just a couple of short years ago. So this is an astoundingly cool software, if you ask me. I'm going to show you a little bit about how it works. When you get your invitation from me, which you will receive in the day or so, and you accept that. Click on it and accept it. I'll give you a code that you put in, and once you put in, you will have this visible courseware that you can use for the class and for other things. This courseware can be used to support other classes as well besides anatomy and physiology. But at least you'll get this particular course and everything I do with it this semester. And if you take A and P2, you'll have that with it as well. But you can always keep it forever. It's not just a short time during this class. If you go over to the left-hand side, you're going to see your courses. And once you click on the course of interest, which will be My Human Anatomy and Physiology, it'll say Bio 121, Human Anatomy and Physiology 1. This is what you're going to see. You're going to see a series of laboratory assignments that are laid out for you, and you can click and open them up as I'm doing here. So you'll get student instructions, kind of figure out what you're doing with your registration and how to get everything working. Getting started, how to use your courseware app. This is really great. It has a little quiz with it you can use to make sure that you know what you're doing. And then you will, this week, do an introduction to human body, something I'm going to show you here in a minute. And you can also do the cellular level of organization lab. So these are the ones that are going to be assigned for this week. And you can see that if you go around to the side here, you can see that they're due on the 31st of May. Okay, so you can see their due dates that way. Then if you come down here to the tissue level, this is for the following week, and you can see that one's not due until the 7th of June, and so on. And as we go all the way down, you can see that the last bunch of them in terms of the nervous system are all due near the last day of class on the 3rd of July. So they're laid out with due dates, and you can just go through them, and you can do them at whatever pace you want, but we recommend you do them along with the lecture material for that particular week's module. Again, this week it'll be the introduction to the human body and the cellular level of organization. So I'm going to jump into, and by the way, I will be opening these up at different times as well, just the way I do the modules in our Canvas site. I'll also open these up at different times. So if you find that you're done with the cellular level of organization lab and you want to jump into next week's lab because you're already doing that module, that's fine. Let me know and I'll open them up early. I'm showing you, this is, so when you first jump in, you're not going to see everything because I've got them hidden until the dates come up. But you'll get to see them as soon as that week's module is ready to roll. So this view for you will be changing as the course goes on. Again, if you want me to open them up early, no problem. Just ask me and I will do that. Okay. All right, well, let's get started just with a demonstration here. You can jump into an introduction to the human body. And there's a couple things. First of all, there's a couple of ebook presentations. These are right out of one of the apps here called it's the virtual visible body book. It actually has an anatomy and physiology book. So this is the prefixes and suffixes lesson that goes along with it. Highly recommend that you do that. And then a ebook presentation of planes and positions. That's the one we're going to look at in just one moment. If I was to click that, it would open up this. This is just one of the assignments, and you can see I can scroll up and down through it and do the assignment. You and I are going to do that together in just 1 minute. But let me come back to the courseware here for a second. Notice it also has a guided notes. And these guided notes go along with the ebook Planes and Positions lab. And so I can see if I can find that for you. Let me see if I can open that up. Here's what that guided notes looks like, the anatomical unit. So basically it comes down and walks you through some of these terminology: anterior, posterior, superior, inferior. These are the terms that you and I learned in the chapter 1 anatomical terminology piece. But this will correspond nicely to the visible body lectures that we're visible body labs that we're going to do. So as you walk down through them, this can be helpful to you. It's like, what does epi mean? What does hypo mean? What does gastric mean? Those kind of things, which will help orient you to this material. So anyway, once you have opened that up and printed it out or keep it alongside you, you can begin going through this the visible body labs, prefixes and suffixes, as well as planes and positions. So let's do that together, the planes and positions. Okay, if I clicked on that, it's going to open up this in a new window. And let's go down through it. You've seen this before, so I'm not going to take a ton of time. But here is a body, the one you're going to be viewing in visible body. Here it is in anatomical position. You're facing the anterior side, right? Up here is cranial. And if we trace down this way, we'd be tracing caudally, right? And this is the ventral or anterior side. Here's some terminology that's interesting. If the body is laying down, and it's laying down on its back, it's called the supine position. Laying on your back is supine position, so you can see the person laying on a back. If you're laying on your stomach, that's called the prone position. So just an interesting added terminology there we hadn't talked about. Go down through the rest of this lesson, you'll see some of these other terms. So, for example, this is your anterior view, or what we always call the ventral view, or what we can call the ventral view. This is the posterior or the dorsal view. Here's the midline and the lateral stuff we talked about. Midline right down the middle, lateral anything off to the side of that in either direction, of course. This is a superior view or a cranial view. This is an inferior view or a caudal view. This is the difference between superficial on the surface and deep. Okay. Now, just as a relative term, remember the skin would be lying over top of this. So the skin would be superficial to the muscles, which are deep. So it's always in relative terms. Okay. Here's the proximal distal. Here it says the proximal is nearer to the origination of the structure, but easier to remember. Proximal is closer to the midline. Okay, proximal is closer to the midline. This is, and then distal is farther away from the midline. That's the humerus there. Okay, in sections that you've already learned about, here's the frontal plane, which divides into front and back, or ventral and dorsal sides. This is the coronal, this is the transverse plane, which cuts into superior and inferior, or again, we use the terms cranial and caudal, either way, but this is a transverse plane. It can be anywhere in the body. This is an oblique plane. We haven't talked about that, but if you make a cut that doesn't go perpendicular to the axis or parallel to the axis of the body, then you're making an oblique plane, one that passes through at some form of an angle. And that could be a transverse oblique, as this one is. It could be a sagittal oblique. It could be a frontal oblique. So if you're not cutting in a perpendicular or parallel fashion, you've got an oblique plane. This is a sagittal plane, and you can either be mid-sagittal or you can be off to the side. You can see this one is not quite mid-sagittal. That's off to the side a bit. And then if you take this down, it'll give you some terminology that goes along with it. Look at this. Mid-sagittal divides the body vertically into equal right and left halves. Parasagittal divides the body vertically into unequal right halves. So it gives you some of the terminology. And then it gives you just a little quiz. You can go through and do a little quiz to do this. So a very easy assignment that you'll do in this particular lab. If you go back to the visible body courseware, you can see there's a quiz as well. So when you get done with this, you will click on the unit and open up its quiz, and it will take you to a virtual quiz, which you can do right inside the visible body courseware. So it takes a second for this to open, but once it does, we can get started. I won't do the whole quiz for you, but you just click and take a quiz. And the first question in the quiz is, in positive feedback, the initial stimulus produces a response that, okay, well, that's going to exaggerate the stimulus. I'll choose, and then I submit that question, and it goes on to the next question, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to not take this whole quiz for you, but that's what you'll end up doing, okay? And that's how we'll do each of the labs. It'll have little exercises, potentially a little handout to print out, and then that goes along with that exercise, and then some quizzes that will go along with them as well. Okay. I think that brings me to the end of that particular demonstration, but I wanted to show you, if you go on the left-hand side here and go down here, you're going to be able to click into My Apps. And if you do that, it opens up the 4 apps you get when you get Visible Body. And the ones I think are going to be most useful to you is this one, the A&P textbook. That's a nice textbook that just corresponds, with the material you're learning an OpenStax. So either one's going to be fine. I love the OpenStax, but this is fine too. And a lot of the exercises are drawn right out of this, so you've got that. But the human body, the Human Anatomy Atlas is the one. It's just phenomenal. So I want to open this and show you. Most of the exercises in your labs are pulled right out of this this A&P Atlas. So let me take show you what this looks like. Once you open this up, you will have a full 3-dimensional and interactive human anatomy atlas. And so, for example, let's suppose we wanted to take a look at the skull. So if we choose the skull, you can, using your mouse, you can either increase the size of the skull, decrease the size, you can rotate it any way you want. Let's suppose you've rotated it and you say, oh, geez, what is that? That's kind of interesting. I've never wonder what that is. So if you click on that, it'll tell you what it is. This is the infraorbital canal in foramen, and if you want to know more about it, it'll tell you more about it as well. So you can say the infraorbital foramen. So the maxilla are 2 of the 14 facial bones. The facial bones articulate with the bones of the cranium and so on and so forth. And you can read this whole piece here about it. And so that's a kind of interesting something that this allows you to do. Let's just take this whole thing and say, well, just what is this? This looks like to me it should be the left maxilla. So if I click on it, yep, there's the left maxilla. That's the maxilla bone. If I click on this, I should get the ethmoid bone. There it is, the ethmoid bone. Okay, and if I click on this, I should get another part of the ethmoid bone. If I click on this, I should get the sphenoid bone. If I click on this, I should get the frontal bone, and so on. So as you click through, you can begin to investigate these things. Really nice. Here's the zygomatic arch, or the zygomatic bone of the zygomatic arch. This is the mandible. And in any event, you can click on anything in these labs that you want and resize it, move it around, look at it from different angles. And here's the hyoid bone, for example. And again, learn more about it over here. So that's the way this works. Very phenomenal if you want to go back to the systems and just say, well, let's take a look at the respiratory system and add that on to what we're looking at right now. Again, resize it. So there you can see the trachea, for example, and here are the lungs. You can turn it and look into the bronchi. So here's the right bronchi, and so on. And it's the left, actually. There's he's on his back. Maybe I want to look at the digestive system, add that to it. If I want to, add different parts of the skeleton, I can do all that, or take all those things back out. If you'd rather see this in a female, you can do it. There are minor differences in skeletal features between males and females. And so, that's just an amazing tool. Okay, I think I'm going to bring this video to an end. You have an idea now what you're doing. And again, if you have any questions, as always, just give me a shout. Thanks.